Welcome to Main Street Minds with your host, Amish Munshi. This is where industry leaders and seasoned pros share their secrets to success beyond limits. Let's dive in.
Hey, this is Amish from Main Street Minds. We have a very special guest, Michael, over here with us today. He's taken extra time off his very busy schedule on Friday to jump on this podcast and help us out with sharing his valuable insights. So, without any delays, let me open up the floor. Michael, can you introduce yourself? What you're doing right now?
Sure. I've been coding basically since I was 14. Been building like games and all sorts of stuff like that when I was younger, and I worked in tech for the last technically almost 20 years. Um, More on the hardcore development side, tech
Mm-hmm.
leadership. Started a few different startups, mostly not super successful, but still, it's like a very valuable experience. And right now, most recently, I'm working at a humanoid robotics company. Um, I'm developing a lot of the video compression, processing, networking stack, and various components part of that.
Great. Yeah, I think that has like extremely good future potential of, I think the industry has been around for a while, but I think now it's the time when it's actually going to pick up and like become very, very useful.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of really cool stuff, and especially we're building a humanoid, so there's a lot of different startups around this, and we're more on the like focus on logistics side, assembly, delivery, stuff like that.
Great. Yeah. So what got you interested in robotics?
Well, when you start, when you learn computer science and you build programming and stuff like that, a lot of the focus is more on the information technology, developing, data processing systems. Back in the military, I've done lots of work also with machine learning and different like large distributed data processing stuff.
Mhm.
But a lot of that stuff is kind of, you don't care about latency as much. You don't care about responding as quickly, and your focus is more on getting stuff working and scalable.
Mhm.
So last comp or not last company before that I worked at was Phantom Auto.
Mhm.
But I've been there for like 7 years, and we built a system for driving cars and other vehicles and other robots remotely, and there some level of autonomy. I was there for 7 years, so we did a lot of different things, and yeah, responding to real time problems and responding to real time input from a lot of different sensors,
Mhm.
computer vision, all that stuff is pretty fascinating, especially if you can. I think for me, it's always been about creating something that's valuable that can affect people. And I mean, I think everybody agrees that if autonomous car happened, if it could save so many lives, it could create in many ways, could save a lot of money and create a much healthier society where people won't need be dying by the hundreds of thousands from car accidents. So like, if yeah, it just became like this really interesting challenge. I started from this more data processing machine learning start, but it pulled me more and more on the controls and real time and sensor fusion and sensor processing stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Nice. Yeah. I was just thinking about the same thing today morning. I was driving down the road at 45 miles an hour. And I was like, a human body travels at 700 to 1,000 miles an hour without any impact, right? I couldn't imagine. Like, it takes me like 2 hours a day going someplace, coming back, and like just in travel. If things could be coordinated in a more predictable way, we could have cars going at much faster speeds and saving so much time for people. The main reason we don't allow infinite speed or unlimited speed is just the chance of having an accident and the impact of when that accident happens, right? So if there was a way, I know this has been something that a lot of companies have been trying, and they are making good progress, is cars speaking with each other remotely and kind of being able to like communicate and drive by themselves. How far do you think this technology is? Like, do you think this is going to happen in 5, 10, 20 years?
That's the hard question. So, like, think about this way. If we go, because you started by saying, okay, it's about the time of impact, and but I think it's more like if we just had trains
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, just a massive chain of trains, so you could get from any point in any other point in the country, which would be super expensive, extremely complicated infrastructure. But let's say that's the case, right? You could move in incredible speed. It could do so. We would save massive amounts of land and money on parking and just energy and so on, and could be very efficient. So if we remove these chaotic elements, and there are some countries who've started to do this. I think in Germany, and also it might be, oof, damn, I forgot, one of the other European countries. What they start doing is creating special autonomous vehicle lanes in
Mm-hmm.
some highways where you could move much faster, and they don't interface with the rest of the traffic, and you don't have to worry. So a big issue is just those edge cases. So, like, we call them edge cases because we're engineers, but in reality it's just the reality of, oh, you have bikes, you have animals on the road, you have people crossing, you have two people driving around need to look at each other's eyes just sometimes to synchronize, oh, I need to turn, whatever. We have common understanding as humans that we
Mm-hmm.
use, and we still get into a lot of accidents. And the scariest thing is autonomous vehicles. Um, the moment an autonomous vehicle can be 100 times, 1,000 times better than a person 99% of the time, but
Yeah.
1% of the time it creates accidents.
Yeah.
It's a lot scarier because it's something very unknown. It's something that we need to accept as a society, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the bigger challenge. Like, and of course, you could also have, oh, whatever. Sys code has bugs. It needs incremental growth. It needs data. It needs deployments, and there's so much information out there. Like, humans can learn from their environment. They only drive a few different lanes, but the autonomous vehicle needs to be able to go anywhere and everywhere. Um, there are like inherently difficult challenges that it really depends on. What I'm saying is it depends on scale. It depends what kind of autonomous vehicle, where are we putting it, and a truly universal autonomous car. It's tough just because there is so much complexity that you'll need to be able to handle to make it acceptable, but also like universal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if you look at the LLMs today, still like the great or ChatGPT, DeepSeek, all that stuff is like super smart. It has limitations of latency, and it has limitations of just the universality. Like, they can't all do everything better than everyone. They can do
Mm-hmm.
some things better than some things, and other things, because there's a limit to how big they are, how big the models, where how to run them, and so on. There's like these weird trade-offs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very hard to approximate. I don't know, but we could have like basic autonomous stuff that can do some things. And
Mm-hmm.
we have in some countries have it. Some there are some solutions to do it, specific lanes, specific routes, so on.
Makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So, on going back a little bit on the robotics side, like, what are you mentioned about a humanoid, right? What is there a specific job that you're expecting that humanoid to do?
So what we're doing right now, currently, the specific project that I'm working on, we're Reflex. We have a humanoid um, that is not bipedal. It doesn't walk on legs. It uses wheels.
Okay.
Part of the reason is we're trying to make something that we can deliver to market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a reasonable amount of time, we can save a lot of power. Just being able to move on, like you need more actuators, you need more stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, that
Yeah.
needs to needs to move the vehicle along. So if you can have effective arms, you can pick up things, drop off things. And the specific use cases we're looking at is logistics, is
Mm-hmm.
things. The hope is we can take over use cases where people don't want to work at, things like very cold storage,
Mm-hmm.
or work that requires you to be to being up on your legs for a very long time
Mm-hmm.
during the day, or jobs that are not trivial for warehouse, for like a robot, stationary robot to do in a warehouse. But if you have like a thing with arms that can move around, read its environment, scan items, pick them up in inventory, some part of assembly. But yeah, right now there's a lot of different use cases with different customers that are more in a warehouse environment,
Okay.
maybe a little bit factory environment.
Okay. So so basically, do you develop custom solutions for based on the customer's needs, or are you developing something?
Our current focus is to build this one specific unit that's
Mm-hmm.
fairly generic and can do a lot of things, but we've integrated like different grippers. We've integrated things like suction, which is very helpful in like you need to pick up totes or boxes or stuff like that, and move them around and being able to, yeah, the word is
Logistics.
torque, like you apply more force separately in both arms.
Interesting. Nice. Cool. So, you did mention a little bit about like what got you interested in robotics, right? But what has your career been like? Like, was it planned? Did you this exactly where you wanted to be, or like what does the entire career progression look like from an intent perspective?
So there are specific things that I've done over the years that
Mm-hmm.
have helped me achieve goals that help me move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about those, and then yeah, I can talk about the kind of planning I've went through. But I think like there are just concepts that I've always had in mind. Things like, oh, I want to work on projects that affect people. I've a lot of startups, and even not startups, a lot of even pretty big companies will often develop and spend money on things that never touch customers or touch very few customers and never actually provide value. Like okay, your investor keeps giving you money, so you'll keep working
Yeah.
on it as long as they'll give you money, or you can tell people, I'm going to make this product. It's going to take 20 years to make this product that might not even exist at that point. So my hope was always trying to find those places where I can actually get something delivered, hopefully improves people's lives. And this was something like back of my mind. Again, this started a little bit in the back in the military, where I think like you have this massive impact. I've worked in intelligence, and you'd sometimes work on something, and then maybe a week later, maybe even the next day, you'll hear about it in the news, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
realize, okay, I did something valuable. I might have even saved somebody's life. So that's kind of a high I always try to
Yeah.
reach. And
Interesting.
then the other part is, I think I've worked with. I'm talking the abstract, but I wanted to like make those concepts known, which is something I've realized very early on is whenever you have somebody who's new relatively who joins your project, very often, especially if you do this right, if you hire the right people, um, this time you join the company is the hardest time. You're creating this first impression with everybody you're working with, and you're learning. It becomes much more difficult to use your training, your previous skills, and so on. So I whenever somebody new joins, I'll make them my best friend, and I'll try to pull as much as I can from their understanding of the world and their skill set, but also um, make their value known to others,
Mm-hmm.
and and become, help them reach and become comfortable with their work. Because once you make those contacts, even outside that company, um, or within that company, those are people who will be your friends for life, very often, or at least for a long time. And
Yeah.
they'll help you grow and find the right positions, and connect to different parts of the company as they grow in their career, or again, other places. So a lot of my, like, I've had lots of plans, but the things that got me there are just getting those contacts and and developing and trying to find ways to develop my skills to
Mhm.
achieve those goals.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think you brought up a very interesting point of saying finally everything is about people, right? Like whom you know, why you know them. Hopefully, you know them in a good way, and they trust you. If and the other aspect is the reciprocity, right? If you have helped somebody, chances are in future they're going to go ahead and help you back. So
Yeah.
that's a very important aspect. So anybody joining any this is a general career advice, right? I've not yet seen any profession where you if you take down somebody and you go ahead, more than likely it doesn't succeed, right? Working with everyone around you is still the best way to reach much higher goals, right? So that's a very valuable insight.
Yeah. And the other side of it is also, even if it's not a new person, but um, the best ways to get things done, especially if it's not like in your globe, in your sphere, is trying to see what motivates others, trying to understand what is their pain points,
Mm-hmm.
where, like, even if I need somebody to do something and I have the authority, hey, whatever, their manager or their manager's coworker, whatever, I can
Yeah.
tell them, hey, just do this. I will often try to say, hey, how you doing? Do you have any specific issues with this topic? Maybe, just reach out and try to understand, like, oh, is there, can I help you with this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about working on this thing, and can I help you, or do you know anything about this? And if you put it in their perspective, you'll a learn a lot, and b,
Mm-hmm.
again, you'll create those contacts and be able to grow and develop and so on.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. Cool. So, just going back, what are some of the other recommendations you have for somebody starting off in the career right now? Like, I know there is at least two major areas of focus that I know, like robotics and AI. But in addition to that, is do you have a like how should somebody end up selecting a career path in tech in today's world?
um, so in both those fields, the robotics and the AI stuff, um, there's a lot of special, unique skills that you can develop,
Mm-hmm.
that will make you more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can develop those skills in isolation. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can say, I over the years I've learned to troubleshoot problems and like diagnose bugs and so on, and that's a skill that they don't teach super well in school.
Mm-hmm.
But over time you just learn, like, oh, I need to run an experiment to figure out the smaller parts. I need to try to test things in isolation for bigger components and architectures. um, those are very, like, and of course there's things like, okay, to do robotics well, you need to know physics, you need to know electronics, you need to know like mechanics and some levels of chemical engineering, material engineering. Like, there's so many things that uh, need to happen for a thing to to a thing to exist, right? To be effective in the world. um, Learning a little bit of everything helps. um, but then the other part of the equation is not just the learning part, is also how can you become this, how can you represent that in your CV or whatever, to other people in the industry, if you're coming to interview somewhere. I think the best way whenever you go interview somewhere is going back to what you said before, is first you need a reference. But if you don't have that, or you want them to be, you want the person on the other side to see that you have those values or skills. Again, with no experience, this is tougher. But if you can find a way to prove, oh, I worked on this really interesting project, I've achieved this particular result, and I can show that on my CV,
Mhm.
that's a million times more valuable than I can solve an algorithm in 40 minutes, which is most
Yeah.
coding interviews. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, apart from that, outside of work, like what are some of your hobbies? Like what do you like to do?
Well, it's technically outside of work, but it's kind of related. I've been doing a lot of work, especially after COVID, and
Hmm.
just helping people find jobs. And I've had lots of coworkers and uh, whatever interns, other people that I work with, and I've connected them to various companies. So if anybody's looking or hiring, I try to always post things on my network on LinkedIn. It's something that's like very fulfilling again. And reciprocity, going back, it helped me when I was looking for jobs or when I was starting my own startups, hiring people. Let's see. I like to play Go, which is a board game.
Hmm.
Um, I've been playing it again since I was very young, and in tournaments and online and stuff. Um, Music, I play piano, and it's just it's kind of like improving yourself and trying to make something and trying to learn a new skill is also very healthy and helps you like think that's a different point, which again, maybe not as a beginner, a complete beginner, but being able to think about problems from various perspectives can
Hmm.
be super helpful in general. Like once I learned a little music theory and I've realized that, oh, there's some overlap here with signal processing. Like I've worked on this other completely unrelated project, but now I understand what's the meaning of this concept when it's like male spectrum analysis, like
Yeah.
uh, trying to correlate. Oh, this is actually a note, right? This concept in signal processing actually correlates to something I'm used to, and I can understand their relationship.
Yeah, that is very deep and really interesting. So I'm really glad you're actually like to like contribute back and help out people to get find a job. I think that in today's world, I think that's extremely important. And obviously placing the right person at the right place, right? Like uh, and it's amazing like how uh, uh, kind of disorganized or like segregated the whole world is. Even with all the tools available right now, it's still like so difficult for the right person to be in touch with the right recruiter, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, like sometimes, you can bring a person to a place and they won't like they a lot of it is about the relationship with your manager, right?
Mhm.
The person running the project or doing the thing expects X, but the person can only provide Y, and that Y is super valuable maybe somewhere else or even there, but that's not what the manager was looking for. So
Yeah.
that just happens. It's very sad when it happens, yeah, not just getting the right person in the right spot. A person can be perfect or amazingly
Yeah.
skilled, but maybe not the perfect fit.
Yeah, it could be the culture, it could be the team dynamics, it could be
Yeah.
organization's focus, the person's interest, the stage where they are in their life right now. It could be
So
any.
going back to the point before, that's another great tip, which is don't give up. Like it can be a lot of people do end up in a point where they're saying, well, I don't want to work in tech anymore. Because
Mhm.
like if this is tech, I don't want to do it. This is not tech. This tech in this spot, in this position. There are
Yeah,
so many things.
yeah.
Like programming is not a personality, it's a skill,
Hmm.
right? The robotics is a skill, physics is a skill, and you can use them to do various things in various places, and you might find something completely unrelated, maybe even doesn't pay as well, but makes you happy
Yeah.
somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds great. So, what are some of the best ways for somebody to reach you? Like, how should somebody reach out to you?
I'll share my LinkedIn, Michael Kris at LinkedIn.com. Let me see, michaelchris90 at gmail.com. That's my email. You're
Sure.
well if you're looking for jobs, if you're hiring, I have a list. I'm trying to actually make a little app to share those contacts with people, and kind of like a Craigslist, but more on like hiring and giving people references and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So once that's out there, I'll share a link as well.
Yeah. Cool. How far is it? Like, is it still in initial stages or?
It's basically working. I'm just collecting a little bit more data and doing some basic testing with
Well, you've
known
finalized the
friends and
team.
stuff.
You've
Like
finalized
some
the team.
some of the best. By the way, this is goes back to what we just talked about. The best people I helped in the past has always been like a referral from somebody or at somebody who I've worked with before, or somebody worked like I can feel this person will really enjoy this particular job, right?
Hmm?
So that's kind of the matching I'm trying to do, and yeah, it's basically working, but probably it needs some cleaning up, some shaping up, and I'll probably share a link. Yeah,
Sure.
probably in I'd say 3-4 months.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Look out on the LinkedIn profile. I think that's where you'll be able to find the posting when it's going live.
Yeah.
So cool. So just before we depart, any other final thoughts for the audience?
I like I said, I'm thinking the main pain point is like people will. It's a tough market. Okay, right now fundraising is also hard. The economy is not great. So another thing to consider, like I've gotten hundreds of no's, thousands of no's. I've interviewed, like whenever I had to interview, I've done, or even not interviews. I would sometimes do consulting with different companies, and again, you'd get, somebody very excited one day, but then the next day it's gone, the position's gone, or whatever. It just happens. It's the state of the world. It's the state of the world, sadly. um, Sometimes maybe change tracks for a while, maybe disconnect, maybe have a different temp job. I know you've spent your time preparing yourself and building up the
Yeah.
stack skill set. um, and sadly it's not always possible to find the best place, but hey, everybody I've worked with who um had eventually, even it took 6 months, could
Mm-hmm.
find something that worked, and then maybe later found something even greater.
Mm-hmm.
And just no, don't give up. It's in with time things get better, faster. um, you can develop opportunities, you can develop the contacts. Just the entry point is the tough part.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the first job is obviously the most important. That kind of sets the path for your entire career for most of the people. And then other thing that I see is a lot of people when they get their first job, they are stuck in it as if like they're married to the job. Like they just don't know how to change. Those are two things that on one side I like it, like okay, like there is it brings some stability to that person, but on the flip side I'm like it should just not limit a person from a longer term better career. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and it's scary. It's tough. The first time was tough. Second time, you don't know how hard it is, how hard it's gonna be. So like I said, it's something I've over time I've been able to kind of, oh, I worked on this really cool project, even though it was a small startup, it was successful.
hmm
Now I have people reaching out to me. Now
yeah.
I have like seeds, or like I'll start consulting somebody, and
hmm
if something breaks here, I can jump ship pretty easily, or I can just find, okay, give them, I don't know, 20% of my time or something like that while I'm
yeah,
still looking.
yeah,
And yeah,
makes sense. Sounds great. Thanks Michael for coming on the show on a busy Friday evening. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great talking to you.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Main Street Minds. Want to share your journey with our audience? Head over to mainstreetmindspodcast.com/guest to apply.